What's that?
It's another group after this, right?
No, we're just doing one big, we had kids come out.
Oh, okay. So this is it?
Yeah, we had classes come down, it's one block, and then students that could get out of class, but I'm pretty sure there's more coming. Because we gave out 30-something passes on top of 30. It doesn't look like 60, though it might be. More coming. More coming, okay. All right, well, in the meantime, why don't we get started? They were nice enough to get here. Most of you don't have me as a teacher, but I think you know. This is Garen. I think this is the 12th or 13th year that my dad has been willing to come in and speak about his experiences in World War II. He was over in Europe, Germany, and then policing after the war. Richard Grubb.
That's
Thanks
me.
for coming. And he only missed last year, but we gave him a pass. He was in the hospital with a broken hip. It's the only year he's missed. And other than that, he's been coming here since he was like in his late 70s. He's 90 now. And then we have, I want to give the right title. I was going to say Robert Duvall, but Mass?
Robert Dovell.
Duvall, but what do you, Mass? Engineer? What's your title?
Master Chief Gunner's Mate.
All right, Master Chief Gunner's Mate, Robert.
See, these are just, every one of them is 4 years.
Right.
And here is a chief petty officer. And then there is Master Chief has got the 2nd star. Senior Chief's got 1 star in the middle.
Okay,
But
thank
it's a good rating.
It's a good rating, excellent. And this is his first year, and he's also 90 years old. And he was the Pacific, and they were just saying in the office, I guess between the two of them, they personally took care of Europe and the Pacific. But we'll ask some general questions. And I want you to raise your hand if you have anything you want to ask or say. At the end, there'll be question and answers. You wrote questions in your classes. Feel free to ask them. I don't want to read your question. You should ask. And then we'll save like, I don't know, 8-10 minutes if anyone wants to come down, talk to them one-on-one, thank them for their service, or take pictures or ask questions. I know. Is anyone in here going military after high school? All right, so you guys will, oh, Tyler, you got business? Tyler, got to get down here and get a picture for me afterwards. That's my student. So anyway, so what we'll do is I'm just going to start with some set general questions, which maybe is a good model for how you will be interviewing your vet on April 15th. So I'll start with the American involvement, or when the tide turned in American public sentiment turned towards the war. So do you want to start first? Mr. DeVoe, do you remember December 7th, where you were, what you heard, 1941?
Yeah, because I remember 1941, but the only thing is I was too young. So it was 41, 42, 1943. I was 17 years old, and I said to my mother, I want to join the United States Navy. And she says, because I was trying to go for the submarine service.
Ooh,
But
never.
my mother said, I won't sign for that. So she said, well, what are you going to do? I said, enlist in the United States Navy, and I'll go from that. And she said there was 3 things that she didn't want me to do. What do you think number 1 was? But that's okay. Number 1 was no tattoos.
I thought she was going to say, don't get hurt.
And number 3, she said, don't bring me back a bundle. Now, I didn't even know what the hell she was talking about. I'm a 17-year-old kid, and but I found out what it was, and I didn't do it. and don't join the submarine force. I said, that's fair enough, Ma, sign it. I said, I'll do exactly what you're telling me. And she was pleased, and I didn't do any of the things that I would tell her that I didn't do. For the simple reason, you know, your mother is something that's special. And it was tough for her because I was only 17 and she had to sign her name to give me permission to enlist. And what happened is I went to boot camp. And they had just closed Newport. And I had to go to Sampson, New York. That's way up on the Finger Lakes in New York. And I'll tell you, across the lake was Canada. I went in August, so the weather was beautiful. And I really enjoyed boot camp. I tried to learn everything that I could, but there's so much. You just make emphasis, you know, like you do in your little class book. You write it down. And so I enlisted and went through boot camp. And boot camp is something that you have to do yourself in order to make something of it. And whatever you do is for you. Now, I didn't know what I was going to be, you know, so I just kept an open mind. And then once we graduated from boot camp, we had 7 days home. So we got back acquainted with the family and everybody that we knew. And then I had 7 days. And at the end of the 7 days, I went back to Sampson, New York. And from there, we went to Norfolk, Virginia. And we got onto a transport ship. And I wasn't familiar with them. But I went there and they said, you're gonna go on the 8th deck. That's where your bunk is. But they said, we'll have someone bring you because I wouldn't know where the hell to go. So I went there and I'm on the 8th deck.
That's 8 from the top, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I said, how am I going to get there? He says, you go from one bunk to the other until you get onto the 8th one. And I says, what if I fall off the 8th? He said, well, that's tough. You're going to have to make sure you don't. So you have to tell your mind that you can't move. And I made it. And we had the Germans submarine in the Atlantic. And there's nothing we could do. If there was a general quarters, we went down where we were supposed to, like I did on the 8th deck. And when general quarters, they put a buzzer on, and that makes noise. And you get down where, because otherwise you interfere with the people with their 40 millimeters or their 20 millimeters or whatever they were using. And then we got a clear signal, and we were all set. And to eat, I said, I don't know if I'm going to eat because I don't want to be seasick. He said, don't worry. The chief cook will take care of you. So the first thing he did was give us a bunch of crackers, the saltine. He said, chew on those. Never got seasick. That was fantastic because seasick, you know what happens. You make a mess. But I enjoyed the trip. And with the transport ship, we went right up the Atlantic, and then in the evening, we went by Florida. We see Florida all the way up, and they was all lit up and everything. We went by that, and we were 2-3 days. And on the third day, I was happy to get there. So what we did, we had to go through the Panama Canal. Do you have any idea what that is? Okay. So you go through 3 locks. Now how you go through 3 locks is, they have gates, but this is enclosed so that they can fill it with water or take the water down. So anyway, the ship went not on their own power. They were towed in with cable on each side, and they towed you in, because otherwise there's too much pressure with the back of the ship, you know. All the screws, they're big, and when they move, they do a lot of pressure on each side. So we didn't go on our own, so we were pulled there. And then they closed those doors in the back, and they filled the ones that we were in, because the door was already closed on the front. They closed the back one, and they pump water in, and your ship comes right up to the height that it's supposed to. And then what happens when you get to that level? They pull you with a cable, they pull the ship. Now we're on the bottom level. Now we have to go to the second level. It's the same thing. They fill it up to go to the second level. And then we have to go to the third level, because there's 3, depending, see, from what we always figured out, the Atlantic was lower than the Pacific. So we went up to the third level, and then they pulled us through, and then from there, we went to, there was a spot there that was full with water. It was a lake. That was in the middle. So we went to the lake, and then from the lake, we went to the Pacific side, the same thing, but we had to go down. And we went down the same way that we came up. Do you have any questions about that right now?
Yeah, let me just interrupt a minute. When Bob talked about submarines, I had to squirm there because I have claustrophobia. Anybody else here have claustrophobia? You know what I mean. I can't picture myself in a submarine. I just couldn't do that. So I really admire people who have that capability.
Dad, I'm going to ask you to.
Sure.
I'm going to ask you to, so we'll get you through Pearl Harbor and training, and then talk about the actual experience and what they do. So the same thing, on December 7th, you will be the same age,
You
right?
know, we're about the same age. We're both 90 years old.
I'm going to pass these around. This
Yeah.
is 18,
Yeah, I was 18, well, about 20 when that picture was taken.
this one.
Yeah.
And then here he is. What year is that you buy your cool car?
That's a 38 Oldsmobile.
All right, so this is, if you want to see, he's 18 in front of his 38 Oldsmobile. All right, so where you were December 7th, and then a brief, your training, and if you want to explain your jacket too, after we go to the military. But, okay, so what was your, did you
Let me say
enlist,
this,
drafted?
Pearl Harbor did something to our country. The result of that was amazing. You have no idea. It brought our country together like, it was like a miracle. We were all on the same page, so to speak. Everybody was gung-ho. We wanted to go to war and get this over with after that dirty trick at Pearl Harbor, that sneak attack. Everybody felt the same way. And in fact, it got to the point where if we saw somebody in civilian clothes, we wondered, what's he doing? He should be in he should be in the Navy or Army or Air Force. And everybody was anxious to go and get it over with, really. So that was the spirit, and that had a lot to do with our victory. Now, there's so many things to talk about, but
Why don't you talk about your training? You went one path and then they changed that path on you the last second, right?
yeah, I started out, I enlisted the day I was 18. The next day, I went down, I lived in Akron, Ohio. You know Akron, Ohio, the rubber city. At that point, 90% of all the entire world's rubber products were made in Akron. So you can imagine the smell. You could smell rubber wherever you went, anytime. Goodyear, Goodrich, Cyberling, Firestone, I could go on and on. There are a lot of rubber companies that you haven't even heard of. But that was the home of the soapbox derby also. I won't get into that, but we actually started that. That's another story. We'll say that for another time. The soapbox derby. So anyway, back to the war, what was going on. So it did bring people together. That was the good thing about Pearl Harbor. And I remember, how many saw the movie Tora, Tora, Tora? How many saw that movie?
They watched, some of them watched Pearl Harbor, but not Thor.
Yeah, and there was a part in there I remember. The Japanese admiral said, "I'm afraid we have awakened a sleeping giant." You remember that? And boy, how true that was. They had no idea how, when the U.S. got together, put their mind to it, the United States
So your personal training though, you went, where were you first, Bragg? Fort Bragg?
Fort Benning, Georgia. I started out down there, and they assigned me to ASTP. It was called Army Specialized Training Program, and it was kind of a neat way to get your college in. The Army would pay for your college education 4 years, and you'd come out a commissioned officer. It was really neat. So we had to take a rather, it wasn't that tough really, but it was a specialized test covering all kinds of subjects. And you had to pass that test before you could qualify for ASTP. So I passed the test and started out Fort Benning with ASTP basic training. Same as infantry basic. So in March of '44, they shut down that whole program because we were losing a lot of men, too many in Europe and the Pacific. And they needed soldiers. It's that simple. We needed more fighting troops. So they shut down the entire AST program, and all of us at Fort Benning, under that basic training program, we were all shipped to Fort Bragg, North Carolina, and joined the 100th Infantry Division. So I didn't sign up for the infantry, but I ended up being there. And we had to qualify on all the different guns. And I happened to do very well with the machine gun.
I'm gonna get your jacket so you can show them.
Sure. And incidentally, you guys would appreciate this, I think.
doesn't weigh 128 pounds anymore, either do you, but.
I was 128 pounds when I wore that.
All right, so do you want to explain what these different rifles mean for the training or point?
Yeah.
So this is totally
See this,
different.
See this here, 2 stripes normally is a corporal, but when you have a T under it, that stands for technician. Well, after the war, to make a long story short, I ended up working for the chaplain because we had to stay over there for occupation. So I ended up playing the organ and driving the Jeep for the chaplain. It was quite a unique job. I played the organ on Sunday, these big mammoth pipe organs in Germany. They were beautiful. So I had some fringe benefits there with that, and I had my own Jeep to take care of. And I souped it up incidentally. I didn't soup it up, I just broke it in real fast. How many have heard the theory, if you break an engine in fast, it will be fast. If you break it in slow, it'll be slow. You ever heard that story? Well, I heard that. I remember growing up as a kid. And I thought, here's a perfect chance, because the motor sergeant said one day, Grub, everybody goes by their last name. Grub, we're going to put a new engine in your Jeep. It's about time. Fine, okay. But whatever you do, don't go over 45 for the first 500 miles to bring it in, okay? Well, the next day I had to go to Munich on an errand. So I thought, now's my chance to test this theory. So I put the accelerator to the floor, all the way down the Autobahn. I floored the thing. I could smell the new paint burning in the engine block. Oh, it was, and I thought, I could really give this a valid test. Well, to make a long story short, believe me, it turned out to be a real fast Jeep. I could beat anybody, and people would come from all over and challenge me to a race. But I could outrun the MPs because they just had standard engines in their Jeeps, and nobody could catch me.
That's after the war, though.
That's after the
You haven't
war.
even gone through training yet.
Okay, yeah.
What is it? This is,
Back to training.
back to training.
This, if you ever see this, that's an infantry. See that blue rifle there? That's an expert infantry badge. It was worth $5 more a month. $5 added to your pay. That was a pretty nice increase. $5. Now, if you would pass a special test, which I had to do, you could get you got a wreath around your badge if you were in combat. So anytime you see this rifle, this blue rifle with a wreath, you would know that, first of all, that soldier was a combat infantry, an expert infantry man. And if you see the wreath, he was in combat. So all of these things mean something. The Purple Heart here, you can see the colors are the same. That's the actual medal itself, the Purple Heart. Anybody would like to see that? Make sure I get it back though. Okay.
Oh, we'll go into lockdown if we can't find it. But if you want to pass it around, you won't leave. They won't leave it until your Purple Heart's back in your hand.
I see a lot of honest faces out there. Incidentally, have I met some of you before?
No, it's
No?
a different junior class.
Completely different. Okay, good.
So when you ended up, how did you get over? You originally thought, they didn't tell you even where you were going. You thought you were going Pacific, and then we'll get you over to Marseille, and then let Mr. Dorval talk a little about the war, his most memorable experiences over there. Since unfortunately, we have limited time, I want to hear.
Okay.
So
I qualified, as I indicated. In the infantry, part of your training, you qualify on every weapon. The .45 pistol, full Colt .45, a machine gun, a mortar, a Garand M1A1 rifle, that was a standard rifle in the infantry, and a carbine, that was about half the weight incidentally, a little carbine rifle. They were handy, not as much firepower, certainly. So you qualified all of these. So I did very well on the machine gun. I had a good spotter. So they made me a first gunner. Sometimes in the Army, they don't do it that way. Whatever you did your best, they give you something else to do. Was it that way in the Navy? You qualify for one thing and you're assigned to something else. Sometimes that would happen. But anyway, I ended up being a machine gunner. And I learned pretty quickly in combat. The enemy, the Germans, would love to kill first automatic weapons and officers, lieutenants, captains, majors, any officer would be a better target for them to kill. So we learned, boy, they're actually trying to kill us. That was a sobering experience. The first time I saw that firsthand, there was this far from a guy, first lieutenant, and we were in a farmhouse in France, and he was looking out the window with binoculars like this. And I thought at the time, get away from that window. The snipers would spot you in a minute if you're right up to the window. You learn to stay back. Never get right up to the window if you want to stay concealed. Stay back and you can see pretty well without getting up there. Well, sure enough, a shot rang out and the sniper got him right between the eyes. It killed him instantly. Never knew what hit him. And I should have warned him. I felt like warning him at the time, but he's the first lieutenant and I thought he should know better. It was only the second day of combat, but we learned pretty quickly. The Germans are trying to kill us. This is for real.
Okay, could Mr. Duvall talk about a memorable experience, maybe most memorable experience when you were in the position?
Well, when I went aboard ship,
All right, okay.
and it was called the USS Trenton, New Jersey. It was a light cruiser. At the top that we had for guns, we had the 6-inch, okay? And on a heavy cruiser, you had the 8-inch. And we were all lined up, we're nobody anyway. We're all lined up, and there was a torpedoman, and he had a torpedo. Now, a torpedo is 21 feet long and 3 sections. The front section is the one with all the material that you need to blow up. The middle section is the motor that's going to run them. And the after section is where the propellers are. And one propeller turns to the left and the other one turns to the right. And they run on alcohol, 190 proof alcohol. That's the fuel. And you have what you call a gyro. A gyro, you have to adjust whether you want the torpedoes to go down to 6 feet, 12 feet, or whatever. And that means the torpedo is going to go like this, and then it's going to go down to the height that you want it to go. Most of the time we had them at 6 feet because the ships were pretty heavy, and they were down to 6 feet better. And when the torpedo hits it, the nose has got all that ammunition in it, all the powder and everything that it needs, and it blows, and it makes a big hole. And then the ship starts to get the water into it to try to sink it. And then everybody that's in the damage control, they go and see what they can do to stop the water from coming in. So they'll have anything, a door or whatever, depending on how big the hole is. And they secure it so that the water don't come in. And if they don't secure it, well, they're gonna go down deep 6. Deep 6 means it's gonna go down to the bottom. And we didn't care too much because they were the enemy ship. But what we can do to the enemy can do to us. So they had torpedo planes with torpedoes on it at the lower rank. And that's it's long, but it's 21 feet long. And it's 21 inch in diameter, the torpedo.
Right, that's big.
And I'll tell you, it was quite an episode the first time I saw this. The first time the torpedo went down, it came back up. Then it went down and it stayed going down. And it was fascinating.
Was that the torpedo that you had launched or the one coming at you?
But we didn't have any coming at us.
You never had them come at you, that's good, okay? And I know they definitely want to hear about, I know it was towards the end of the war though, you witnessed kamikaze? What
Oh,
battles
yes,
were you?
yes. Well, that's something that we never thought we'd ever see. Because we didn't take our aircraft with all the armament that we have and dive and hit the ship. But they did.
They commit suicide.
Yeah, commit suicide.
Yeah.
If the head guy that runs Japanese and he says that's what he wants them to do, that's what they do. Did you ever see a movie about that situation?
Yes.
Did you have any questions about it?
They worshiped the enemy too, didn't they? I mean the emperor. They would actually worship.
Hirohito,
Mm.
that's what they called him. And he's the guy that controlled that, but he was safe at where he lived, you know? And those people were different than what we are. They just do what they do. Now, like President Roosevelt didn't tell us what to do, but we had people that ran the situation and they knew what to do so that we wouldn't hurt ourselves. Because we're just kids, you know? And so my experience is that I was aboard my ship and we were in all kinds of rick-rack with the Japanese. And when I saw the plane, I saw it coming down like this, coming down. I said, what the heck is gonna happen here? Right on deck. And there was a 5-inch 38 there that we had, blew the heck out of it because there was a lot of ammo on that, you know, on that, on that plane. And the guy that, can you imagine somebody telling you to do that? You know?
And just so everybody understands, when Bob talks about a 5-inch, that's about like that. That's the diameter of the bullet of the shell. And the shells can be quite long. But when they get to be like 16 inches on a battleship, that's huge. They have big shells, big bullets.
And they were doing it a lot. They were doing it a lot. But our planes never landed on the ships or landed on the side of the ship to blow it up.
So not on your ship. Who was your admiral? Who was the admiral you were under? Your high.
I can't make out what you're saying.
What admiral? were you
What
under?
admiral?
Admiral in the Pacific. You under Nimitz
Would-
or?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
But he used to set us up, but with reasons to take care of us, you know? And everything was so different for us, you know? But we did learn because we had very good chief petty officer aboard the ship. And there was a chief petty officer for every division. And we had 12 divisions of different kind of work they did, you know? Like they were gunners' bays, they were torpedomen, and deck chargers, and we had all kinds of things. But we had a highlight of it and what to do. Because when it's general quarters, whatever your job is, that's what you do. Go to their job, and you do the best you can. And the traffic, the way it moved during general quarters is up starboard, that's the right side of the ship, and down port, that's the left side of the ship. Because if we're all going in all kinds of ways, we're going up ladders and one's going down this way here was uniform, you know? And then you did what you had to do. And because some of us had the 20 millimeter anti-aircraft guns because of the planes. And that was one of the best. But we used to use the 5-inch also. 5-inch were about this round, about this long. And you had a gun crew. Now, each one of the gun crew had something to do. And if they didn't do it, something went wrong. But they were all trained, and they were very good. And we did fight off a lot of them. We did fight off a lot. It's surprising what you can do when you have to do it.
You always say that too, Dad. So thank you. So I'm going to pick some of your memorable, because I know them. December 5th, 1944. This was a telegram sent home to his mother, my grandmother. It said, regret to inform your son, Private Richard M. Grubb, was slightly wounded, inactive, 5 December in France. You will be advised as reports of condition are received. Dunlap, acting adjudicate general. So this was the 19th, so it took 2 weeks to get this out. So you were slightly wounded? I'm going to talk about that morning.
2 pieces of steel made the same hole in my chest. So I didn't know I was hit for a while. And I kept going, and then I felt kind of wet here. And I looked down at my entire
You
field
want to set up
jacket.
how you were hit? You weren't hit by a bullet. So what had happened that morning?
Mines, tripwires. The Germans had set a whole series of mines. And boy, we lost a lot of guys that day, that morning. I think we lost about 12 or 15 killed, not more than that wounded. But the Germans were pretty good at mines and tripwires, and they used to use a lot of that. I wanted to tell you a little bit about, I had something on my mind I wanted to tell you. Well, the day I met Eisenhower, I think you might like to hear that briefly. It's a long story, but I'll make it short.
I'm going to get to that at the end of the war.
Okay.
I'll leave that.
We'll say that for the end of the war.
I just wanted you to kind of understand what it was like in a jail
Okay.
It's required now, it wasn't the Red Cross and, Red Cross, was that a lieutenant coming to help you? You also,
Oh, yeah, the morning I got hit, I didn't realize I got hit for a while, and then I discovered I was all full of blood, and I thought I better lie down, because I ripped open my shirt, and the blood was just pumping out like that, squirting out of this hole. Well, that's kind of alarming when you see that coming out of your body. So I thought I better lie down. Thought that might be a good idea. I called medic. You're trained to do that as soon as you're hit in combat. And hopefully there'll be a medic nearby to hear and come over and help you. In my case, he came over pretty quickly. Well, the guy came over and he approached pretty close, almost to where Bob is from me. Not quite that close. He tripped over another line, tripwire, with the medic as he came over to help me. And it killed him immediately. He never knew what hit him. So I always thought about that. The last word out of his mouth was grub. That's my last name, Grub. He said, "I'll be right over, Grub." He was working on another guy, all shot up and bleeding. So, boy.
I know. I always find it fascinating, and I'll get back to Bob. So you ended up in England in the hospital. And can you
Yeah.
just tell just a few sentences? So after you got released, this fascinates me, that what they do. So how did you get back and find the 100th?
We were in the 7th Army, and the 7th Army fought in southern France. So I had to go from Birmingham, England, back to my outfit, which was somewhere in Germany by this time. And I knew they were that far, and they kept advancing while I was in the hospital. So it was up to me to find my outfit, to rejoin them. I thought that was kind of strange. Nobody was there to give me directions or anything.
I'm just telling him for them, for their benefit. So they say to you, find them. They
Yeah,
don't give you the.
Well, they thought, they had an approximate location that they thought it might be. So anyway, I hitched a ride on a British freighter from going across the English Channel. I went around to the port, down to the ocean, the channel there. And I got to talking with some sailors there, British sailors, and they were leaving soon on this freighter going across the channel. I said, "Can I hitch a ride with you?" "Sure, hop on." So it was up to me to do everything. I had to arrange everything, right? So I finally found my outfit in southern Germany. By that time, they were well across the border from France into Germany. And I found them, and I had to cross through some woods. And the last direction that somebody gave me was you cross through there, and then you should find them dug in on the other side of the hill. Okay, so I walked through there, whistling, nonchalant. And I finally found them, and some guy in my outfit said, "Grub, did you come through that wood?" And I said, "Yeah, I just came through there. There are Nazis in there, there are Germans in there. We haven't cleaned it out yet." And I didn't know any difference, of course, and I walked right through, so they didn't spot me. So I'm still here, thank the Lord.
It's a lot of lucky breaks. Did you have any lucky breaks?
What's that?
How about you? Did you have any lucky breaks or combat or things you remember that you want to talk to him about?
Well, what I did in combat, when we have anti-aircraft, that means if the planes are attacking us, I was on a 20 millimeter. And the only thing I had to watch for, I had some gloves that were asbestos. And after so many rounds that you fire on a 20 millimeter, you have to change the barrel because it gets so hot,
It's real hot, yeah.
it's all messed up. And put another one in, right, you got 3 or 4 around, so you take another one that's fresh and you put it in and lock it. And then you go again and fire that weapon. As long as it's plain, Japanese plain, that's what you're gonna do. And then they got the 5-inch 38. They use everything that they can to wipe them out. And we did a good job. I never got hurt. The only time I got hurt on a 5-inch 38, there's so many people on that. And each person, each man has a job to do. And if something goes wrong, they're supposed to holler, silence. Then the gun stops, everything moves, stops moving. What happened to me is that I stepped on a piece of grease and I slid and I went down while the unit was moving. And I got pretty well messed up. So this shoulder here, I got a piece of steel like this and with 12 screws. And on this one here, there's nothing like that, but they fixed it up, so at least I can manipulate. And that was awful. That was awful.
Now, did they put in the screws and you were in the hospital during the war?
What's that?
Did they put the screws in and were you in the hospital from the fall? Or was
They
there a
put it-
hospital
they-
right on the
They
ship?
put it in after.
After.
They did what they could. And then after, the ones that did it was the VA in Providence,
Oh, all right.
because it was so awful, you couldn't use it, at all. But when they locked it up, I can't go anywhere on the right side. But this hand can go wherever it wants, but I can't go into the pockets or whatever it is on the right side. The left side, I'm okay. So they wanted to do the same thing on this side, and I said, you're not gonna do anything on that side. Because I can handle that, because I have to take care of myself, I got used to the left hand to go over and clean me up, okay? And if they do the same thing on this side that they did on that side, what the heck's gonna happen? I'm gonna need somebody. So far, nobody's messed with that side.
All right, well, that's good. All right, Dad, and then I'll go back to you. So just a few words on just combat every day, foxhole conditions, winter, and you might want to tell a story about the time, and he has so many, the time that the sniper let you off.
Oh, yeah, okay. That's a good, I'll never forget that.
Oh, you should.
There was a German sniper. I had just crossed a clearing, and in the forests in Europe, typically, they have fire lanes that are about as wide as from here to the end of to the wall over there. Where they don't plant trees. They're called fire lanes. So here I was. Let's see, I know 2 different stories here. I'm getting them confused. I stopped for water, that's it. I put down my machine gun, sat on the ground. There was a ditch, irrigation ditch there with some water. I filled up my canteen. I didn't care if I got sick or not, the water was stagnant. I did get sick incidentally. boy, you can really get sick with stagnant water. Don't ever do that. And the Army issues halazone tablets for that very purpose. But I was in a hurry, I was thirsty, and had a drink for a couple of days, I guess. I just gulped down some water. Boy, did I get sick. So anyway, I went back. I was sitting there for quite a while, just like a perfect target for a sniper. And here I found out, and a few minutes later, I heard a shot ring out above my head a little bit further up. And here one of our guys shot a sniper in the tree, a German sniper, killed him. He fell down right beside the tree, and he's lying there in the trunk of the tree. And by that time I passed him, and he was slumped over like this, his body. And he had let me go. He decided not to kill me. He could have easily killed me. I know he could have. I was a sitting duck. But for some reason, he let me live. And so I passed his body. I said, Dr. Shane, boy.
But who did he take out afterwards? So you should know, right?
The what?
Who did the sniper kill that exposed his place?
Oh, that was another story. A medic, he killed a medic halfway over, and medics are supposed to be immune from snipers. They wore a big cross on their helmet, and also an armband. Snipers are not supposed to kill medics, but not everybody got the same message. So some of them used to really like to kill medics. So one guy followed me, and he got to exactly where I had stopped. That was another story. And he was running, in fact. And a sniper got him on the run. I heard the shot ring out. I looked over, and he doubled over. He was killed instantly. And I saw a lot of people like that who died without any pain. At least, that was one positive thing.
If you both want to say, just what an everyday, again, what were your rations like? What was it like in the bottle? And then, Mr. Vo, you can kind of talk about on the boat, what you were issued, what a regular meal would be, a regular day. You want to go first?
Well, what we had a mess hall.
We call it the same thing.
And if we were in action, those waters, and the lunch came time, they had different people take over and get the chow. We probably had a sandwich, or we probably had hard-boiled eggs, or whatever it was. And that's how we did it. And the food was always good. And the only thing is if the ship was out, we'll say 2 months or 3 months, then we ran out of food. So we were what they called it, it was, I'm trying to remember the name of it. They were about this long and this wide, and it was food. You had it. You probably had it at home or whatever. But I just can't think of it right now.
Is it a meat product or bread? What is it?
What's that?
Is it like a meat product or a bread?
Yeah, a meat product.
That Spam stuff you're talking about?
Spam.
Spam?
That's it.
That's an acronym
But
that we
used
won't
to have
talk about.
Spam, no eggs, but we had spam.
Right.
And we had the spuds. The spud, that's a potato. And everything moved along very well. So we never went hungry, but we were not liking what we were eating, But that's after a while, the food went away.
That prompted a quick thought. We used to, well, first of all, let me say, whenever we'd get pinned down, quite often, in fact, out in an open field, that happened to us a lot. We'd all of a sudden be surrounded by Germans, used on one side, dug in, and they'd open fire, and they'd have mortars and machine guns and sometimes artillery and so forth. So we couldn't do much. We were pinned down in an open field, and you take cover wherever you can find a rock or anything. So we'd call for air support, and the captain, quite often, I heard him, he'd be right near me. We need some support right away. He'd give the azimuth where we were at the location. So in about 20 minutes, do you know what a P-47 is? And a P-51, you guys? P-51 Mustang and a P-47 Thunderbolt. We typically almost always get 4 each of those, about 20 minutes after we'd call for support and help. We needed help. Boy, we're at treetop level. We could see the pilots up there. They'd wave to us and smile and do everything. And they'd soften up the Germans, believe me. And then we could move right in. We could move out or whatever we had to do. That was, what a sight that was. And at the time, we would say to each other sometimes, those lucky guys, I'll bet they have warm socks, for one thing. And I bet they're dry. We always had wet socks, and we'd give anything for a dry pair of socks. And your feet are always cold and wet. Horrible. I'll tell you what, a very quick story you'd appreciate. Thanksgiving Day, 1944. Picture that, you weren't around then. 1944, Thanksgiving. The captain told us, good news, we're having a turkey dinner sent up from headquarters. Lassiter, the Jeep driver, will be here momentarily with turkey and dressing and gravy and, oh boy, wow. Did that sound great? And we're anxious, they're waiting for Lassiter to come, the Jeep driver. So we were looking, I remember seeing him. I was looking down the hill. We were dug in up here pretty high. And I saw him coming, pulling his Jeep loaded with our dinner. And he went into some forest area from the road. And he never came out on the other side. And I kept wondering, what happened to Lassiter? Well, you know what happened. The Germans captured him and had our turkey dinner. And I thought, that takes the cake. That was really bad.
Now I'm mad.
No, that's right. I'll never forget that.
At the end of the war, when you were going in and well, say anything you want in between towards the end when the Japanese were being forced back, well, mostly, well, we'll talk about Hiroshima in a minute, but when you were going into the end in Europe, into Germany, you would talk about how there was desertion of German troops, changing uniforms and those kinds of things, and how desperate the German people were. Do you want to just describe what Germany was like, Berlin, when you were heading in?
Yeah, first of all, the German people, per se, were really great people. In fact, some of our best friends now are Germans. And Hans and Bridget Gardner. And every year, my birthday, they call from Germany. They sing happy birthday in German and then happy birthday in English. They're really great people.
So yeah, I know it was, you ended up doing a lot of business in Germany and Japan, the irony of that. I don't know how many times you went back.
Right. That's rather ironic, really. Germany and Japan became our two best customers in overseas. outside the U.S. And they were the enemy during the war. So I was always thankful that I had that opportunity to travel on business later and get to know the Germans and the Japanese. Really great people. They really were.
So what was the, if you can remember, describe it, the conditions you talk about when, after Hitler was defeated and taken out, the people in the streets greeting the soldiers, if you just want to tell stories. Right, didn't you guys?
Well, quite often we'd capture a little town, especially in southern France. We'd drive the Germans out, and a lot of the French civilians were still living there. They were living there during the occupation, for a few years. The Germans were there before us, several years. So we'd drive the Germans out, and they'd come running out of their homes with champagne and wine and dancing in the streets and waving flags. And oh, they were so thrilled to see us. They really were. What a welcome party that was. I'll never forget that.
So if you went in 44 also, right? You went in, did you go in 43?
43.
43, 44. So you were in all the, obviously, through the atomic bomb.
Yeah.
Do you remember that day and how the word got out?
Yeah, and I wasn't on the ship that brought the atomic bomb,
No.
but we kind of escorted it,
Oh, really?
and we didn't know what was going to happen. And so we sailed through, and nobody knew that it was on that ship, and the enemies weren't doing anything. And we got to where we needed to go to bring the atomic bomb there. Then everything was done, and they had everything, and they dropped that bomb. When they dropped that bomb, the Japanese, we killed an awful lot of people. And it was, we did something inhumane there, because it never had been done. So it really, really was something. And then he dropped another one, atomic bomb, on another island, and that blew them out. But the war was ended, because Japan was kind of won, and they were all not fighting anymore. Because you see, the Japanese, they would be listening to the people that controlled it. And whatever the people told them to do, they did. But when that atomic bomb, the first one, it was an awful thing. And you would see it all over the place because we were there. And we felt, you ever feel numb about something that's happening? Well, that's how we did. We felt pretty numb. But if he didn't or wouldn't stop the war, we'd still be fighting it. So he did that, and that completely stopped everything. And at least now we were getting ready to do other things to help us. And but those two atomic bombs, what he did is that he did a fantastic job. And all of the people, even the people in the United States, thought that Truman did an awful thing by killing that many people. But if he didn't, they would never end it. It would have never ended. And that's the way it was.
We had some great leadership during that period. Eisenhower was a fantastic guy.
Now, Dad, after the war, you want to say, they haven't gotten this far yet, but, you know, we occupied Berlin. You'll learn about that, the 4 zones. And so you had to stay for 6 months, and you couldn't go home. So you want to tell, well, why don't you tell the Eisenhower story? So that one we definitely have enough time for.
Okay. In the Army, you never volunteer for anything. You learn, keep your hand down. Don't. Sometimes you want 2 volunteers, and finally it would come to the point, you and you. 2 volunteers. That's the way it works. Does it work that way in the Navy? 2 volunteers, you and you.
What's that?
Oh, yeah.
He wants to know if you had any choice in the Navy. They just told you what to do, right? You're volunteering.
Well, not exactly. The way it was run is they had leaders.
Leaders, okay.
Okay? You had a chief in charge, and you had work that had to be done every day, and they'd give so many jobs to different. And then at the end of the day, you go and check and see if they were done.
All right, so you had specific assigned jobs first, and he's getting a special. So there was 2 of you that day that volunteered, Dad?
Yeah, Polak and I. Polak.
No political correctness.
In those days, forget political correctness.
No, well, we're not forgetting it. Okay.
That's, I really feel that's going to ruin our country. We've got to get over that. Everybody's so afraid to speak the truth. Speak up. And in fact, every Ivy League school was founded on free, open debate.
Dad, we're in 1945.
Okay. Anyway, that's how I feel. So, where were we?
We weren't on a picnic. We had jobs to do.
Volunteers, that's right. 2 volunteers, you and you. Polak and I were volunteered to do guard duty one day, and the sergeant of the guard said, this is well after the war now. And he dropped us off at this little DP, displaced persons, DPs, remember that? They were called DPs for a general term. See, all the slave labor that the Germans had during the war, from Poland, from Czechoslovakia, from Greece, from all over that part of the world. Just imagine now, part of our job as the United States Army was to get all of these people back to their various countries. See, people wouldn't even think about that. It was part of our job. And that's a mammoth job. So here we had this little town that was assigned to the Polish group of DPs. They were all Polacks. And the guy that was on guard duty with me was from Milwaukee. We called him Polak. And he loved that term. And he really did. He liked that. So Polak and I were driving, the sergeant of the guard drove us in his Jeep to the little town and said, now the 2 of you will be here for 4 hours, and then we're going to relieve you 4 hours from now with 2 fresh guys. Okay, so stay on the streets and don't you even think about going into any house. Stay together outside on the roads. because there still was a lot of unrest, and people would shoot each other, hang each other. It was sometimes kind of a horrible mess that we had to straighten out. It wasn't all nice, you know. He wasn't very quiet at times. So here we are, and he said as he left us, waving, "Be on your alert, no houses." Eisenhower is coming through here today on a inspection tour. There's a rumor that Ike's going to be here. So Pollock and I thought, we both agreed, that sounds like a latrine rumor. You know, have you ever heard that term? Latrine rumor. That means it's just a rumor started somewhere. Didn't mean anything. So we just went about our duty, and the sergeant dropped us off and went around the corner, and as he disappeared, Pollock was leaning against the fence, and he said, "Hey, Grub, good news. We have a chicken dinner in this house, in this bungalow, waiting for us." Oh, great, the fried chicken. Well, we went in and joined this. Boy, it was great. So we were having a good time. None of these Polish people could speak a word of English, and I couldn't speak a word of Polish. Dzień dobry, that's the only word I learned. How are you? Dzień dobry. Something like that. So anyway, we're in having chicken, and somebody came running in the house in this little bungalow. There's no back door now. Otherwise, we'd escape through the back door. There was only one door in the front. And he came running in, yelling, screaming. And he's telling us, Eisenhower is right out front of this little house, this little bungalow. Of all the places to park this big black sedan, it was a big Opel, big German luxury car, with 5 stars on the front. Boy, is that a sobering sight. 5 stars in a circle. You don't see too many of those. And Eisenhower was the supreme commander, incidentally, of all of Europe. The British all reported to him, the French, everybody. He was in charge of the whole works in Europe. So anyway, his sedan is parked right smack in front of our little place, so we couldn't even escape out the front. He's right there. And all of his staff is around like little chicken, like little hens following the mother hen. So we quickly got our uniforms on again. Okay.
Just tell the story.
Just tell the story.
3 minutes, 2 minutes.
We had to get out of there. There's no escape out the back. So Eisenhower, we were peeking out the door. When he was looking up the other direction, and all of his staff is looking up there with him, we took that opportunity and ran across the front yard, jumped over the little picket fence, and started to walk down the other way. And we thought, we made it, nobody saw us. And about that time, we heard this big booming voice, "Hey, you two, wait a minute." There was our, excuse me, our divisional commander, 2-star general. He said, "Wait a minute, Eisenhower might like to talk with you." "Yes, sir." We're standing there with our knees shaking, and Eisenhower and his little flock followed him. He came right up this close, closer than this, to me, and he said, "How many points do you have, soldier?" I said, "Not enough, sir." And he knew exactly what I meant. I didn't have enough to go home. I had to wait another 6 months in Germany. So anyway, that was my encounter with Eisenhower, and he never did give me those points on it.
You have to say he offered to give you some, but
Yeah, he said, "I'll give you a few of mine,"
you didn't do that.
but he never did. Never did.
Well, I wish we had more time. We have like a minute. So please ask them any question you would like. I know you wrote some down. If there's something not covered that you want to ask about, go ahead. Now's your chance. Oh, you're so shy. All right, Hannah?
Was it mentally challenging?
Sorry?
Was it mentally challenging? How mentally challenging?
Not too much, no. No, I would say physically mostly. And emotionally. It's a big emotional problem. Away from home, and you wonder about your family.
Any other questions? What's that sound? No? Nothing? Something you want to ask about?
Oh, there's one up in the docket.
We want to know about some of the most difficult times. I know you both had them, and I know there were stories you didn't even get to today that I know. Maybe one thing that you remember as the most difficult challenge?
Well, one very specific time was we were none of us had any water in our canteens. We were all empty. So I said to a couple of my friends, I'll wait until the moon goes behind a cloud, or a cloud comes in front of the moon. It was the middle of the night, real bright, starry night. And it was a dumb thing to even think about, crawling out there. The Germans were dug in just across the valley, and we could hear them over there. And here I am thinking about going out with all my friends said, here, Grub, take my canteen, will you? Sure. So I end up crawling like a snake across, keeping a very low profile, dragging canteens, trying to keep quiet. Picture that, trying to keep the thing of canteens quiet. But I managed to muffle the sound, and I felt about crawled back slowly. Thank the Lord, the wound was hidden by the clouds, so I could do it under cover of darkness. So I'm still here.
You're still here. Yeah. Most difficult thing, if it's something you want to share?
Well, when we were in the South Pacific, and we got word that we were going to the Aleutian Island, that was a big change.
Yes.
We had to get some clothing to keep us warm. And we had to do a lot of different things, like on some of this, we had water cooled. So we had to drain them and put Prestone in those. And we had to take, we'll say if we had 40 oil in the torpedoes, we had to come down and put number 20 so that it wouldn't congeal, you know? And that was a big, big change. But we did it all on the way over, because it took a while to get over. And by the time that we got there, we were ready with everything that we had to do. And we were happy, but I'll tell you, the weather was awful. If you fell into the ocean in that area, 5 minutes and you're gone.
What would happen?
Died. Cold.
Oh, cold.
Yeah, we went from the South Pacific to the Aleutians off of Alaska. Yeah, that's a little temperature change.
I thought sharks.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Sharks.
But I'll tell you though, it was a big experience. We grew up learning what we needed to do, because we used to exercise constantly, like we were in combat. And everything fell in place to where you were getting better every time you were doing it. And to me, that was one of the most fantastic things anything could happen. And when I came back home from the World War, they said to me, what do you want to do? I says, I was learning mechanic before I left. I was 12 years old and I was learning mechanics. Because in those days, they used everything that they could to put experience up here to make a living. Because it was doing what they called a depression.
Yeah.
And I was one of those, he was one of those, and I'll tell you, there was nothing. I used to make money and I give it to my mother so she could put oil in the barrel. You know, we had a 55-gallon drum and they come over and fill it up. And we grew up fast. And the longest time that I felt that I had to wait for something was when I turned 15 to going on 16. It seems to me it took 10 years to get from 15 to 16 to go and get a driver's license. You don't have to think about it. You're already in it. But I mean, you know, the thing is there was such a drastic change that, to me, I grew up.
Thank you.
One thought that I would like to leave with you before, if I could, a major thought. Freedom is not cheap. It's very expensive. That's a lot of good friends.
No. Well, we have a few minutes, and I want to thank you. I want to thank you.
Well,
Thank you so
we
much for
didn't
coming.
we didn't do so bad, but
No, you did a pretty good job. You did a good job.
You know, that's a few years ago.